sure, I might have individual pathologies, and the pain generator clearly may be different for people.
Yeah.
But the movement pattern is the same.
Sure.
And so at some point we have to say, here are the similarities.
Mm-hmm.
We had a young physio in our clinic yesterday, and she's trained with us, and she's brilliant. And she was practicing her side-lying shear technique, which is a technique if you're not a physio, where we will put someone on the side, and then we try to see how much play is between each vertebra at the level. And it's a great diagnostic tool for looking at hypermobility of the lumbar spine and potentially as a mechanism for spondy or all these other issues. But the person still has to get up off the table, off the toilet, and still tie their shoes. And what the stabilization strategies are the same. The technique to be able to move up and down and stabilize your spine is the same. And what you're seeing is someone, unless they had a traumatic injury to that spot, ended up, basically folding the credit card in half too many times and became loose. So on the one hand, I say, yes, absolutely. The generator, is it soft tissue? Is it is it fascia? Is the hip, but, the bottom line is, do you have full range of motion around the primary engines around that? So let's say, do you have hip range of motion? Yes or no? We were just having this conversation about strongman. We just had the world champion Highland Games athlete in, right? And Matt Vincent, he just won the Highland Games 2 weeks ago in Scotland. And we were talking about the fact that many of the athletes who are competing lifting these very awkward objects off the ground don't even have the basic hip range of motion. So when they go to pick up anything, groceries, their kid, anything off the ground, they end up reversing their pelvis because the knee runs into the hip and then it drags the spine with it. And there's your mechanism for spinal injury. So at some point, of course you're treating and doing this clearly the right way, but I think that we can demystify that for some people by saying, look, you've got to know how to move, yes or no, and can you keep your spine organized, yes or no? Here's the lowest example is that the bartenders, right? There's this place, maybe the listeners haven't ever been there, but there's a place called a pub, right? And if you've ever gone to a pub, I don't know if you have, but there's often a bar at the bottom of the pub where you put your foot up. Well, the bartenders figured out that if we took the extension load out of the low back by adopting that sort of Captain Morgan pose with that foot up position, all of a sudden people drank longer. And that's because we're able to maintain a more neutral braced spine. That spine doesn't ache after a while. You don't get the low back ache. You don't want to go home. And, what are we really talking about? So at some point, what we're seeing is that I can do all of these correlates and diagnostics. I still have to treat the tissue dysfunction, but we'll never get to the bottom of the tissue dysfunction if we don't have a cogent model, which includes pelvic floor and the diaphragm. And we just have to put more things into the room. But I completely agree with you that sure, it's specific, but there's this notion that we're all unique flowers, and we're not. It's your spine. And if your kid is sitting in her desk and she's got a flexed lumbar spine, what do you think is going to happen when she's 16? You're going to see the same pattern.